UCLA has bottomed out. Don't be surprised for 1 second when Nico winds up back in the portal.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. College Game Day makes a massive mistake. The ACC has got a surprise team you might need to look at. Just saying. It's Cal. And the SEC quarterback situation doesn't look as good as it used to be. This episode brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Zach Anderson-Yoxheimer of Locked On UCLA is here. I talked about DeShaun Foster yesterday. Names that I threw out that I'll ask you about later, Zach, include, of course, Tony White, defense coordinator at Florida State. You've got USC's defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn. I'd ponder that as well. But I want to get back to this question. Whoever UCLA goes to hire, should Nico be in the conversation? Should he be a part of the Bruins' future plans? Because the way I see it, if you're going for a full teardown, I don't know. That might depend on what kind of coach you hire. There's the question of, could you hire a coach that the Iamaleava camp would want to stick around with? Is there anything UCLA can do to regain their footing with Nico and his camp at this point? I don't know. But I thought about it and went, wait a minute. He's going to be back in the portal, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't really think that there's going to be too much in terms of him leaving. He's going to leave. That's what I expect him to do. Or at least if he has a good second half, is there any way he can up his NFL draft stock? I'm not entirely sure. It's been damaged a little too much, and the O-line's not good enough to give him time to throw. The most important thing is UCLA has to hire the right person, and the right person does not mean you have to do that and keep Nico. Nico is, I think, one of the most talented options out there, but at some point, we've seen, teams work with decent quarterbacks. They got to go after other pieces. Clearly, when New Mexico's running for 300 yards on you, you have other things that are the problem. 300 yards, New Mexico's rushing for against UCLA. Even if they keep Nico, which I think wouldn't be a horrible thing in terms of talent, it just hasn't progressed this year. It hasn't shown a lot of progression from Tennessee to UCLA. He hasn't wowed. He's kept them in some plays, but he hasn't kept them in games, despite how bad they've been.
Yeah, it has been as bad as you could hope. It's been, like fire your coach bad. Oh, wait, yeah, so we are indeed right there. I final thought on this, then we get to the coaching search. Do you want to see them keep Nico? Like for the betterment of the program, do you want to see him tear it all down, start fresh, or whoever they'd hire, do you want to start at a certain floor of production at quarterback, whatever that may be? We know Nico has more than what he's showing right now. He just needs a better coaching situation.
Coaching situation needs better protection on the O-line. So if you have to go spend your rev share, your NIL on the O-line, does that mean you lose Nico? Because, Nico's already taking a lot less money than he could have been making at Tennessee, taxes and all that involved. Is he going to want a raise? Is he going to want a better situation? Obviously. Is this all going to be his say, right? Is his camp, if you will, going to come out and make another decision? And I think they're leaning on their way out. In terms of pure talent, yes, I say you'd want the best pure talented quarterback, and having Nico for 2 years would not be the wrong decision in my mind, but I just think a complete teardown for the betterment of the program. Get rid of the drama. Get rid of the nonsense. Don't deal with it. You want to be forgotten about for a year and then build up and surprise everybody in a year or 2 years with the right hire.
Of course, the right hire is what matters above all else. In your view, who is that right hire? My list, as I mentioned, went straight to D'Anton Lynn and Tony White, who are currently defensive coordinators. I've seen Ben Arbuckle's name get thrown around, ties to the West Coast, current OC at Oklahoma. I've seen Will Stein's name get tossed around, offensive coordinator Oregon. I've seen their defensive coordinator, Tosh Lupoi, mentioned as well. Who would you want to go after?
I think the biggest thing for this UCLA coaching hiring is who's making the decision. Is this Martin Jarmond, who is the athletic director that let Chip Kelly walk and ended up going with DeShaun Foster when Tony White was in that last cycle? Even PJ Fleck was rumored to be in that cycle, maybe leaving Minnesota before he's like, I love Minnesota. No, it's about who makes the decision. And is that the new chancellor who can be like, hey, I'm going to bring in my insight. And he came from Miami. He knows what it's like to be part of a big football loving school. Or is it Martin, who already proved that he made one terrible decision, being unable to get rid of Chip when the time arose, or give him more resources, or they still brought DeShaun. So I think you can be right with the Tony White, who is clearly doing well at Florida State. You could be fine bringing in an offensive mind like Will Stein if you want to try and pair that with a Nico Iamaleava situation at some point. But it really comes down to who's making the decision, because I think there are still plenty of good hires out there, but you also have to generate interest from the fans, right? Do you go after a big name that's not even available yet? Or do you say Chip was that big name 2 cycles ago? I'm not sure if that was something that brought fans down to this apathy that we've seen now. It really depends, I think, on who makes the decision. There's plenty of options out there.
Yeah, and I'm not as down on the Chip Kelly time in UCLA's coaching history as many of the Bruins are out there.
It looks a little different now that you saw 15 games. But I will say, DeShaun won more games in 15 games than Chip did. But,
in his first 15, perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't think DeShaun was ever going to have UCLA in the 8 to 10 win range for a couple of seasons. But what comes to mind when you bring that up and that dynamic and how you look at it is North Carolina, who went with the old chiseled veteran looking to recapture the glory of days long past with Mac Brown and are now doing it again with Bill Belichick. I think there are some fans and donors that are excited about Bill Belichick being there. I know for a fact there are some that internally said, what in the world are we doing? This should have been a completely different direction. UCLA has bottomed out. I don't think there's any other way to describe the state of the football program at the moment. I think there is a lot more potential than people realize. There are other changes that need to be made, from what I understand, administratively, financially as well. But I would steer clear of, the Chip Kelly part 2, because to your point, Zach, I don't think fans will respond super well to that. And when it's gotten to be this bad, the other West Coast program recently, Western-ish, not necessarily right on the West Coast, that has had this sort of situation in the last several years was Arizona State with Kenny Dillingham. Now, maybe that's what they thought they were doing with DeShaun Foster. I think it's pretty clear those are 2 different caliber of coaches that were hired to the position. But you need someone that is dramatic. Herm Edwards, Kenny Dillingham. These 2 guys couldn't be more different in terms of how they are running a program. Not that Herm Edwards didn't have some success. Chip Kelly had some success. It doesn't have to be a UCLA alum necessarily, but you need someone that is going to bring...
turn away from a UCLA. You can't necessarily hand it to the last few UCLA alums have not been good. The DeShaun Fosters, the Rick Neuheisels of the world, they've kind of failed when there's been better options, younger, attractive coaching options, where sometimes there might be an unknown, but the guy is ready to pop off. And you have to go find those Kenny Dillinghams. You have to go find the Dan Lannings, if you will. And you have to maybe be willing to take a chance that's not so sexy, if you will, to the fans, but also knows how to coach the game and recruit and bring fan support in. And if you win, they will show up. But the problem is, which is the guy do you want to go with? Do you want to go with the defensive side? Do you want to go with the offensive side of the ball? An NFL guy?
I don't think the offense-defense matters. I think what UCLA really needs, Zach, is a really good CEO head coach.
I guess that's what they thought. That's what they thought they were getting in DeShaun. I guess that's the cheap version they wanted in DeShaun. And he kind of did that. But it just was so bad that no matter how much was or wasn't his fault, they need to completely wipe it off.
I think they need their own version of Mike Norvell, who, when things got horrible last year, can go out and find 2 new coordinators that are really good. And I'm not entirely certain, because I'm not obviously interviewing these coaches, who that's going to be. I just think that's what UCLA needs, because institutionally, the perception of this job has to change. And I don't know if a guy who you think is just brilliant schematically, like back in 2019 after LSU won the national championship, Joe Brady was the hot name. Or Cliff Kingsbury at one point in time. I don't think that's what UCLA needs, because they need a top-to-bottom restructuring and rebuilding of the football program and reshaping the image of it and perception nationally. And maybe that is someone who also is brilliant schematically and calls plays on one side of the ball. I just think that's what they should be looking for amongst the UCLA higher-ups.
Yeah, they need the guy who's got ties or can recruit Los Angeles, because you don't have to go far to find talented players.
It's
and
right there.
They're right there. And DeShaun was doing his fair part. But unfortunately, you have to be able to win enough games to keep your job just to get those guys to come. There's already been 3, 4, 5 guys decommitted in the 2 days since. So that's the real big thing. LA recruiting ties, or the ability to do so, and a quality communicator. Unfortunately, DeShaun was unable to make that relationship work with the media. Everybody's going to poke fun at the Big Ten Media Days before year one.
What city are they in?
We're in LA, baby. Well, technically playing in Pasadena, but nobody would know because nobody goes. But oh man. But like, the Rose Bowl deserves to have quality football played in from September until January, and not only in January. That's what it deserves. It's a beautiful sight. We forget there's football played before January. I know it's there. I think everybody else
I know it's there. There are dozens of us. Dozens.
I was there in person watching.
He was indeed. Zach Anderson, Yoxheimer, Locked On UCLA. Great as always, my man. College Game Day. I love College Game Day, and I'm so incredibly upset with them. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right means cashing in. With football back, Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. And let's say you want to tune into a Monday night football game, a Thursday night football game, and you want it to have a little bit more juice. Knowing which players you're rooting for or against to have productive days can make it that much more exciting. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. I'll be honest, I was going to talk about this on yesterday's show. Guess what? I was just too upset. I'm still upset. Today it's more annoyed. But ESPN has taken College Game Day to Miami against Florida this week. There is no world. This is a complete slap at the Big 12. This is less of a slap at the Big 10 because ESPN has the media rights to the SEC. That's why this game, and they're involved with the ACC as well, that's why this game has been selected. There is no world. I do not care what you want to sell me on, what story point you want to sell or talk about or highlight. I don't care. I don't care. There is no logical justification for going to a 1-2 Florida team to play an in-state matchup with Miami over Texas Tech at Utah or Illinois at Indiana. Those are both significantly better, higher stakes games. Even though Miami is ranked higher than those teams, the game itself has got far more on the line. Florida's season, we know what Florida is already. They're going to go and lose this game to Miami. They're going to be 1-3. We're going to talk about firing Billy Napier, and people will point out the schedule is so hard. I'll remind people they lost to South Florida. Speaking of teams in Florida, by the way, why does South Florida get to be unranked after 2 ranked wins to begin the year? Why? Just because they got blown out by Miami? So? Alabama got blown out by the number, now 7 team in the country, Florida State. They're ranked, but it doesn't matter? No? Okay. The AP poll just continues to infuriate people. And moments like this, when Game Day decides to go there, Big Noon is at least going to Salt Lake City, so they're getting something up there, as they should, in the great state of Utah. But moments like this, I think you'll hear people say, oh, they're ruining college football. It's ruined. They've just done. I'm never going to get there. I'm not. The games are too great on Saturday. Every time Saturday comes around, when you're actually getting the product on the field that we all wait for, that we all love, the game is not actually ruined. Moments like this do get ruined. Because I love Game Day. I've always loved Game Day. And it was really hard to watch Coach Corso go on the way out and leave the show. It was also time, unfortunately, because it was getting tougher and tougher for him to be in that situation. So that though difficult, was the right call. This one, it is hard to look at this and not come to the conclusion that this is just all about money. It's not for the love of the game. And Lee Corso, someone who ESPN did a phenomenal job of honoring, was about the love of the game. And this is not that. There is no justification for Florida at Miami over Illinois at Indiana or Texas Tech at Utah. There is no justification for it other than, well, that's the one that they want to showcase the most so that they can get the highest ratings and make the most money. It's unfortunate. Am I going to protest the game? Am I going to cease to watch or follow college football? No, of course not. You can see the show over there on YouTube. It's called Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. That is indeed the show. I'm still going to love the sport. But I do lament in a serious way that these sorts of moments are ruined. That game day this week is not going to be in the correct place, and that's going to make it less enjoyable to watch. That's how it comes off to me. And I just wish that we weren't moving in that direction so many times, that the sport wasn't in an anti-fan direction in so many instances. But unfortunately, that's where we are. You know, back in the day, there's a great college football documentary on ESPN, actually, that I remember watching a couple of years ago. And when they first introduced the idea of television to college football, there were people that rang the alarm bells and said, this is going to ruin the sport. Well, it hasn't ruined the sport, but the concerns that they shared amongst each other, because there were a non-zero number of people saying they're not going to come to the games. This is a problem. If you do want to go to a game, check out Game Time, by the way. But there were people then who had a semi-valid point to make. They took it to the extreme, which was, this is going to kill the sport. No, it's not going to do that, because you're actually going to allow the game to be accessed by more people. That's actually something to grow the game. And so when you have that and it is instead being used to enrich people who you've never heard of and will never come into contact with, that is unfortunate. That is highly unfortunate. So, horrible decision by ESPN. There is a justification for it. It's just a terrible justification. And we just have to live with these sorts of moments now, because as we have learned time and again with the AP poll or any number of other things in college football, it is run by people that don't know and understand the sport or even like it that much. They like what it can do for them at times. Speaking of Miami, do you realize how important they are for the ACC? They're actually the ACC's best hope at getting two teams into the playoff, because the rest of the league, Now, Georgia Tech's riding high, as they should be. What a win against Clemson last week. I think Georgia Tech is real good. They were my favorite ACC dark horse coming into the year. They look like that kind of team. Just wait until the committee punishes them because they beat Clemson. Oh, well, Clemson. Clemson's not any good. Oh, well, you just beat Clemson. I mean, Clemson's going to wind up, what, 8-4, 9-3 this year? Yeah, just wait for that to happen. The ACC is not having a good go of it so far. I've talked about the Big 12 struggles in the non-conference slate. Hasn't been great for the ACC. Could argue it's been worse. Duke should be a much better team than they are. In their two biggest games this year, which have been notable, against Illinois at home, they had 4 turnovers and got housed. They went down to Tulane, who is probably, along with South Florida, the best group of 5 team in the country. Tulane is really impressive with Jake Retzloff at quarterback. John Summerall's a really good football coach. He's going to be a Power 4 head coach before you know it. They went down to Tulane, got worked. Couldn't take care of the football. And you look at the ACC's non-conference wins and you go, where are the good ones? It's Miami over Notre Dame. Okay, great. But Clemson lost to LSU. Duke lost to Tulane. Syracuse lost to Tennessee. Didn't look great doing it either. Virginia Tech, that's a mess. You just keep going down the list. Oh, look, Cal is good. Are you prepared for Cal to be good in college football, like actually good? Are you ready for the Calgorithm to take off? Because if you're not, it's very possible you should be. If by now you don't know the name Jaren Kiabe-Sangapolotele, you really should. Cal's offense is not known for being consistent, explosive, good all of the time. In their first 3 games, they've scored 34, 35, and 27 points. They beat Minnesota out of the Big Ten last week. And look, this isn't a game that made national news or headlines. It was a late night game in, that old school Pac-12 after dark window, RIP. Cal plays San Diego State this week. They will win. They're on the road, but they got to go from Berkeley down to San Diego. They will win. No problem. Here's the remaining schedule. They're 3-0 right now with wins over Oregon State, Texas Southern, and Minnesota. San Diego State, Boston College, Duke, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Virginia, at Louisville, at Stanford, host SMU. The San Diego State, Boston College, and Virginia Tech games are on the road. Are you... With how Cal is playing right now, I think Minnesota's a solid team. I don't think Darius Taylor played in that game, which is notable because he's their go-to running back. Yeah, he did not. But I'm just saying, Minnesota is solid. They're not great. They're not elite, but they are solid. And Cal beat them 27-14. They were the better football team. And Jared Kiave-Sangapolotele went 24-38 for 279 and 3 touchdowns. His numbers this year go something like this. 67% completion, 780 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 1 pick, and a 3-0 record. I have a piece of advice for the Cal Bears out there. Get all of your NIL money together right now, or he will be one and done with the Bears. Dude is a stud. So there are some disappointing teams in the ACC. Virginia Tech, Duke so far. You can go down the list. Clemson. I haven't been that impressed with Louisville. Watch out for Cal. Just saying. Also just saying that in the SEC, that deep quarterback league doesn't look very deep right now. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. College football is back. I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. And if you want to get there in person, yeah, Game Time's the way to go. You don't want to deal with endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. You want to use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I've used Game Time myself on several occasions. The process has been great. I got a great deal. I knew what to expect. Didn't get slapped with surprise fees at the end. That's my favorite part. Game Time's the way to go. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Fun fact, if Texas had Cal's quarterback, they would look better and they would have beaten Ohio State. That's just a fact of life and something that we have to all understand at this point in time. Arch Manning and DJ Lagway look terrible. Let me start with Arch Manning here. They played UTEP over the weekend. And through Texas's first 3 games, we know what happened against Ohio State, but we now have a quarter of the regular season has come and gone. And Arch Manning does not look any closer to getting fixed. Can you all tell me what conference UTEP plays in? It's Conference USA. I won't make you wait too long. This should have been a get-right game. This should have been a pad the stats game. This should have been an overhype Arch's big day. ESPN has his own name on the bottom ticker running all day long because he finally exploded. The best thing Arch Manning did in this game was run for 2 touchdowns against UTEP. Good news for Texas. They went for 227. It wasn't the most efficient thing in the world, but they went for 227 against UTEP. The offensive line, I've got some questions. It's not a red flag. I'm just looking at Red River that's upcoming on the schedule here quicker than you might realize. And, well, I would have favored Texas coming into this year. I don't know. I like Oklahoma's quarterback better. I do like Texas's defense a lot. That side of the ball looks really good. The offense feels so far away. At one point in this game against UTEP, Arch Manning had 10 straight incompletions. He finished the game 11 of 25 for 114 yards with a touchdown and a pick. That's a QBR of 26.5, which is graded on a scale of 0 to 100. That's bad. Against UTEP, he looked bad. What's he going to do? Here's Texas's schedule upcoming. They've got Sam Houston this week. Please figure it out. Figure something out. He still makes a couple of good or spectacular throws throughout the game, but this is more than just, he's settling into the offense. No, we've seen 3 games against a real defense. The Texas offense put up 7 points, and he couldn't complete 5-yard wide open drag routes. And then against San Jose State and UTEP, he's been anything but impressive. Sam Houston this week is your last tune-up, because then you start, well, I was going to say you start to play real teams, but they open with Florida in the Swamp. Okay. Anyway, so then they play Oklahoma, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Those are not the toughest games in the world. Don't sleep on Mississippi State. That's in Starkville. Oh, man. I like what Jeff Lebby's doing. Mississippi State, undefeated football team, should be ranked, in case you didn't know. But anyway, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Arkansas, Texas A&M to end the year. You better figure it out but frankly, if you're struggling with UTEP, you're going to struggle with Florida. The problem at Florida is that DJ Lagway isn't as good as he's supposed to be, and Billy Napier is not the right head coach. The problem isn't that Florida lacks talent, or that they're going to lack home field support at the Swamp. 10 straight incompletions against UTEP is crazy work. And some of this comes down on Steve Sarkisian, by the way. Because I'm watching quarterbacks all over the country. I'm looking at Jaron Kiave Sangopolatele at Cal. I'm looking at Dante Moore at Oregon, who sat last year after struggling as a true freshman. They were in the same class. Why does Dante Moore look light years ahead of Arch Manning? They should both look like they're playing high-level football. They're not. Arch looks lost. The mechanics look inconsistent. Nothing it looks better than it did at the start of the season. And that has to come back on Steve Sarkisian at some point. It also has to come down to Arch Manning. And I think there's more of it that is on Arch right now, because I saw what Sark did with Quinn Ewers the last couple of years. And, well, that's a pretty solid proof of concept that he's a good offensive coach and can be productive with a quarterback. But so far, this marriage is just not working. It is just not working out. And if it doesn't start working soon, Texas is going to be the opposite of what I've said about TCU last year, about USC in 2022, Texas is basically going to be the SEC's version of Iowa, where one side of the ball is so good, but it's wasted because the other side of the ball is incompetent. He kind of started to find something with Ryan Wingo. I mean, I'm describing 3 catches as 32 yards as, hey, they made a couple of nice connections in the game. Against UTEP, they scored 27 points at home against UTEP. Yikes. That's a major yikes. So, the Arch Manning experiment, not going well. Not going well. The final chapter of the book hasn't been written yet. But we're past the introduction at this point. You're 3 games in. If Sam Houston is ugly again, boy, some conversations are going to be had that I'm sure are already being had among some Texas fans, because this is not good. This is just straight 11 of 25. Couldn't even hit 150 yards passing against UTEP. Not good. DJ Lagway, also not good. I feel differently about these 2 guys. There is blame to the head coach and the quarterback in both of these situations, but more of the blame goes to Arch and more of the blame goes to Billy Napier, in my view. Now, DJ Lagway deserves a share of the blame. I think it's 60-40 on Billy Napier. Why does this look so bad? Why does this look so hard? Why are these 2 coaches with such mega talents at schools that they are recruiting players to at a rate that puts them in the composite rosters, I don't know, top 5, 10 nationally? Why does everything look so hard? DJ Lagway, I don't care who your opponent was, when you were playing, whatever. Death Valley at night is tough. Deal with it. It's college football. Make an adjustment. Seen other people do it. DJ Lagway should be able to, for goodness sake. He threw 5 interceptions last week. I don't know what more you need to see, Florida fans. I really don't. Speaking of that game really quick, I kind of understand why Brian Kelly was upset, because LSU won and the first question was negative. I don't think it's a great look and indicative of a really strong program when the coach is that ready to snap at a question. Other coaches might deflect with humor. Man, you would have thought we lost the game. I feel good about how we played, but certainly offensively there were some things to clean up. Brian Kelly just went back and forth with a reporter immediately and was calling people out. That's not a great look. That is not a great look. Anyway, back to DJ Lagway. Everything looks hard. The decision making is not there. The offense just looks like it's, stuck in neutral. There's so many similarities between Florida and Texas. I can't wait for them to play. I really can't. It's going to be really fun on October 4th in the Swamp, because you know what? That over-under is going to be pretty low. I'm going to be tempted to hit the under, because what in the world? Texas's defense is elite. Florida's got some guys on that side of the ball. We saw that against LSU last week. That's why Brian Kelly got the question about the offense struggling. But man, oh man, these guys look way worse than they should. And I'm not overreacting to one game. I've got 3 games of data now. 5 interceptions? 5? Man. What more do you need to see, Florida? Do you need to lose to Miami this week and then lose to Texas, be 1-4? Then does Billy Napier get fired? I don't know what the line's going to be, but Billy Napier better find a way to beat Texas, or else he might finally be out. I think he should already be gone. I said it last year. Yeah, this is not good enough. You got blown out twice in 3 games on your home field. But they gave him time, and then he figured it out on the back end. And then you look back and go, yeah, those teams he beat weren't actually as good as we thought they were going to be. Florida State and LSU was just okay. And yeah. But this is what you get. You make bad decisions at the top. This is what you get. So Florida's athletic director, I'm not saying they're fans, getting what they deserve right now. Because he kept Billy Napier around, this is the result. DJ Lagway looks like he's regressing. Arch Manning, boy, you better get it right against Sam Houston. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.